So for years, I struggled with my weight, going from 320 pounds all the way down to eventually 200. But I went through a lot of different stressful cycles doing the diets. I did fasting, keto, carnivore, all counting calories, and really my health took a major dive. That was until one day I got introduced to something called the carrot salad, which is probably familiar to a lot of you who know about Ray Peat. And that's when it started up the rabbit hole. It's what allowed me to finally get lean without the stressful nature. It's what allowed me to build more muscle than I ever thought I could. And also, it really just made it to where life felt fun again. And I live in a state of joy, happiness, and just feel in that high energy state. So I figured I'd do this today and do a breakdown of how Ray Peat would tell you to lose weight. Ultimately, if you follow what I'm about to tell you here today, you'll get very similar results and you'll lose weight permanently by following his protocols as they have done for me. So with that, let's get into his ideas here. And the first thing that he would really go through and recommend is that he would tell you that my recommendation is to eat to increase the metabolic rate, usually temperature and heart rate, rather than any particular foods. And ultimately, this comes down to the core understanding of his philosophy, and that is to do diet and health based off the level of thyroid function. And the idea is that if you are in a healthy state with a healthy thyroid, you shouldn't have any issues with fat. You should be in a healthy state, you should be happy, and your health should be in a good standing. Now, if you're somebody who is hypometabolic, meaning that you have a low thyroid function, you will find that fat loss is pretty terribly difficult for you. With that, here's some of his specific things that he would tell people and when they asked about weight loss, and here's what he would recommend, okay? So the first thing that he'd recommend is that when a person wants to lose excess fat, limiting the diet to low-fat milk, eggs, orange juice, and a daily carrot or two will provide the essential nutrients without excess calories. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes breaking this down and why he means and why he recommended those specific foods. So first off was the low-fat dairy part. So an increased intake of calcium is the single most important nutritional thing for losing weight. The main thing for this is balancing what he would go through and say is the calcium to phosphate ratio, pretty much having calcium optimized to optimize the parathyroid hormone and allow your body to not be in a low metabolic environment. So instead of having these high fat dairy consumption and whole milk and everything, you'd want low fat dairy. And I'll get more into why that's very powerful for fat loss of having the amino acids in dairy compared to other things like muscle meats. So let's keep going. So moving on to the next part, which is probably the most controversial thing in everything he talks about, and that is favoring sugar over starches. So per calorie, sugar is less fattening than starch, partly because it stimulates less insulin. And when it's used with a good diet, because it increases the activity of thyroid hormone. So in essence, the reason that he recommends eating sugar is that it does these two things. One, it's going to keep the stress hormones down. If you are having adequate sugar all day long, adequate glucose coming in, you don't have this release of cortisol and adrenaline. So you're pretty much stable all day long. You keep down the catabolism of those hormones. Sugar at the same time increases thyroid function. And if thyroid function is high, you have the higher metabolic rate, allowing fat loss to happen naturally in a safer, more effective method rather than relying on the stress system. So that's the main part of it. But in addition, he did like sugar over starch because of the insulinogenic nature of starches like baked potatoes, rices, breads, pastries, all that stuff. And this is something I'll get into here in a little bit of why it sort of really depends on the person. But ultimately, you think about this, if you have a piece of white bread versus a piece of fruit, which one's going to be better for you and cause less of issues like with cravings and blood sugar response? It's going to be the fruit. That's going to be the better one for you to choose. And ultimately, that's sort of a big thing to go about. Now moving on to what I believe is the most important part, and that's the idea of restricting PUFAs, or polyunsaturated fatty acids. And when the polyunsaturated fats in the diet are reduced, the amount of them stored in the tissues decrease for about 4 years, making it progressively easier to keep the metabolic rate up and stress hormones down. So PUFAs are problematic. They do impact thyroid hormone, they impact the metabolic rate. And whenever you are stressed and you have a lot of PUFA fat in your storage, which you probably do if you've been eating an American diet, that is released and it causes a lot of free radical damage. It causes mitochondrial dysfunction and causes the thyroid hormone to slow down. So in essence, whenever you're fasting and losing body fat and you've got all this PUFA being released, you're decreasing the metabolism at the same time. So that's why you have a lot of issues with people who are very overweight in the beginning when it comes towards their thyroid function. In essence, instead of the PUFAs, you want to favor saturated fats as they don't have that effect. And they're actually more protective in a sense. And especially if you're losing weight, they help to keep that down. And he mentioned this here as well. He said that a small amount of coconut oil with each meal will increase the ability to oxidize fat by momentarily stopping the anti-thyroid effects of PUFA. So in essence, you really do want to favor the saturated fats coming from animal products, from coconut oil, from beef tallow, cocoa butter. These are the main fats that you want to opt for. Now, if you remember, I did mention something about a carrot salad, and this is where people usually get into his work because they see that it reduces estrogen, has all these benefits and stuff, and it actually does make sense. So he says that, yes, I know people who have lost weight just by eating a raw carrot every day, reducing endotoxin stress. The liver treats PUFA as it treats toxins, but when their concentration is too high, they poison the detoxifying system. So again, here we are with the terrible effects in the body of the PUFA, and it impacts the liver function. But whenever you have these antiseptic fibers like raw carrots, white button mushrooms, bamboo shoots, they allow your body and your liver to actually detoxify the PUFA appropriately, allowing for that fat to come off naturally. All right. So in essence, if you have the thyroid function is optimized, you have good T3, meaning that again, T3 is made also in the liver, and you have a healthy liver detoxification system, you end up losing body fat that way rather than being a so-called fat burner. And this is really a more effective and healthy way to lose weight long term. So having more carrots, and really the white button mushrooms are the most powerful thing that I found. I think they're more effective than the carrot, and it's something that I add in every day, and it's what I add into other people in their diet if they do struggle with gut issues as a whole. Now let's move into your protein sources. And Peat did recommend sort of a higher protein diet, not like a super high bodybuilding type to where you're at 1 gram per pound of body weight a day, but more so around that 0.7 to 0.8 mark in most people. But he would recommend like 150 gram a day range, but really that's person dependent. More on that in a minute. But what he did do specifically is that he recommended having whole protein sources rather than just muscle meats alone. So you'll see that a lot of people recommend just lean beef and chicken breast and turkey breast, all this stuff. Peat would actually recommend to have the whole animal, of like having oysters, of having shrimp, of having white fish, dairy, the gelatinous cuts of meats like oxtail and beef shank. When you do this, you get a whole set of amino acids that ends up balancing thyroid inhibiting ones like tryptophan. And tryptophan in high amounts increases serotonin, which in Peat's ideas was something that did slow down the metabolic rate. So in essence, he would recommend that you get a lot of gelatin as well, because it is very protective of the metabolic rate and does increase thyroid function. So those are really good ways to get the gelatin protein in, which again will have a pretty big impact when it comes towards keeping the thyroid function high. Now the last two things that he talked about was one, slow weight loss. He recommended that you don't do these crazy reductions in weight loss. He recommended the slower the better, just to keep the metabolic rate up. And that's something that I believe in as well. And if you're somebody who has been in this state to where you've been trying to lose, 10, 20 pounds in a month for a long time, and you start adopting his ideas, you are likely going to gain weight at first, and that's okay. He usually said that the increased metabolic rate with adequate protein causes some muscle increase, and when that happens, the basic calorie requirement will increase. The increase in muscle mass should continue for several weeks, and during that time, weight might increase a little, but usually the loss of water and fat will compensate for the greater muscle mass. And that's something that I've seen working with people, is that if they've been under dieting for a long time or under eating, having a low metabolism, they're going to see a few pounds in weight gain starting this type of protocol. And that's okay. And that's one thing that why this is really not too popular compared to like ketogenic or fasting diets, is because you're going to have this period to where you actually need to heal the metabolism, heal the body, get the stress hormones down, even if you gain 5 to 10 pounds. But over time, whenever you heal and the body has caught up and the metabolism is increased, you now can lose body fat significantly easier for a long period of time rather than doing this for the rest of your life. So it does take time, and do have patience if you do try this protocol out, and don't say that it didn't work for me. You just didn't do it right, okay? And the last part of this as well is that he also talked about building up the anabolic ratio, okay, which really comes down to smart strength training. And he would recommend doing type of training, which is just concentric only. So pretty much bench presses, compound lifts, any type of strength training, but not really to failure all of the time, like 4 sets, and not significantly high volume to where it increases stress release. And I've noticed this myself, that whenever I do train in this way, I do these hard workouts, very short, but with concentric positive muscle failure only, I see great results. And I don't have the very high stress or have like that fatigue that happens after a lot of weight training like bodybuilding, where you are just going to failure all the time. You don't have as much of that nervous system fatigue. So that is most of what he would recommend. But seriously, how effective is it in real world application? It sounds great in theory. What are the results? Well, for me, it works. It will get you lean fast. As long as calories are in check and you're in an appropriate calorie deficit, you will lose weight like clockwork. You will see fat come off. You will see it drop off if you're following this type of protocol and measuring the temp and body temperature, okay? Additionally, the no PUFA works. Whenever I cut the PUFAs out, and I've pretty much detoxed myself for 4 years, it takes about 680 days to fully detox off of PUFA. I am able to eat more food now and not gain body fat. I'm eating over 4,000 calories a day, and I'm sort of maintaining my body weight without really doing anything. I just sort of sit around and work out 3 to 4 times a week, walk a little bit, and I just build muscle, and I'm not like getting fat anymore. Like, that's a dream. Now, I will say also that higher protein tends to work better for most in just real world experience. I think that if you're at 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight for protein, you are going to see better effects when it comes towards fat loss. Now, it does take a long time to heal this, and I would completely urge that don't expect this to work in 2 months. Give it about 6 months. Give it that time to heal. Have somebody take you through this. This is what I do with people, is I take you through the healing process to where you can do this and also get off of the dieting train. All right. So that's like one big thing. Don't expect all this to come off immediately when you apply this and like just get shredded. Okay. So that's it for today. I really just wanted to come on and spit some ideas with you and talk about Ray Peat, because I think it's an amazing guy, changed my life, and I hope that you could find this valuable in the delivery. So that's it for this one. I will see you in the next video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and make sure to keep getting them gains. I'll see you around.